Thank you, Josh, for speaking for Newsmax Balkans, and we will talk about the current situation in Gaza with Israel and everything. So, my first question will be: the White House calls this historic agreement what we saw today. Do you think this could really be the beginning of the end of the war in Gaza?
So I think it could be an important step forward, but I also think it's too soon to tell. What we need to see now, and indeed the next step that the agreement lays out, is for Israel to cease all military action in Gaza. And then for within the next 14 days, or after 14 days, the parties have to agree a timetable for, Israeli withdrawal, for the deployment of both the International Stabilization Force, but also of the Palestinian Governing Committee, the ENCAG, into Gaza. So far we have seen Israeli government officials come out and say that they were not able to review this announcement before it was made, that they reject some elements of it. The Israeli National Security Minister Ben Gvir has already said that. So I think we really need to watch what Israel does before we all celebrate.
And how realistic, from your perspective, is this agreement? Do you believe both Hamas and Israel will actually follow through this and with their commitments?
So I think there are certainly elements of the plan that are realistic and that are important, of course, including both the ceasefire, the withdrawal of Israeli forces, the full flow and entry of humanitarian assistance. These are all things that are achievable and can be done. I think the gaps here are where you look at, first of all, Israel's willingness to permit full reconstruction in Gaza, let alone humanitarian assistance. But also, where is the political path forward for Palestinian self-determination? Because if you don't have that, you will just have essentially the same conditions that led to the conflict we've seen a few years down the line.
Yeah, and what do you think will be the biggest challenge? You mentioned some things, but Hamas giving up its weapons, so Israel withdraw from Gaza, or something else, something third?
So I think there are three big challenges here. The first is just the scale of the task ahead of everyone. The dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, the destruction of its infrastructure, the need for reconstruction is a massive task, and it is not clear that there are the resources available to move forward on that task, or the will, certainly on the part of, for example, the government of Israel, to take the steps necessary to enable it. That's the first problem. The second problem, of course, is that this all ultimately remains subject to the decision-making of the government of Israel. And as we see within Israeli politics, there are certainly major elements that do not want to see this move forward, that do not want to see this succeed. And I know from my own experience, having worked for the US and UK governments in Israel, that when they don't want something to succeed, they don't tell it to you to your face. They just make implementation impossible at every single level. And then the third element here, of course, is the Palestinian political aspect. There is, as of yet, no clear role for the Palestinian Authority. And indeed, the Palestinian Authority have been told the only way they could even get to having a role is if they give up any of their international legal claims against Israel. So that, too, is not really a recipe for progress. So I think those are the three main challenges we face.
Sounds good. And what should we watch in over the next few days or maybe weeks? What will tell us this agreement is really working on?
So the agreement sets out a 14-day timeline. It does say that that timeline can be extended. So I think question one is, in 2 weeks' time, have we hit that timeline, and are they moving forward with implementation or not? So that's the first indicator. The second indicator, of course, is whether there is actually a meaningful ceasefire. For the last 9 months, we've been operating under what they've called a ceasefire, but bombs have continued to drop, people have continued to be killed, sometimes dozens a day. So do we see in these 14 days an actual ceasefire, or do we not? I think those are the two main indicators we need to see.
Thank you, John, for your time, and thank you for this opportunity to have a Newsmax Balkans.
Thank you for having me on.